Have you ever walked past someone without realizing that they were paying attention to every little detail about you? Not in a creepy way. Not in a way that made them stare. But in a way that made them remember. Remember your style. Remember the colors you wear. Remember the way you carry yourself. Remember the tiny choices you make every single day without even thinking about them. Because tonight's story begins with a secret. A secret your soulmate never intended to reveal. A secret that stayed locked inside their heart for far longer than anyone expected. And when that secret finally came out, nobody could believe what they heard. Including you. Because what your soulmate noticed about the way you dress wasn't what anyone would expect. And what they said afterward changed everything. So stay with me until the end, because the final revelation is something almost nobody sees coming. The story begins on an ordinary day. A day that seemed completely forgettable. The kind of day where nothing extraordinary appears to happen. The kind of day that blends into hundreds of other days. You woke up. You got dressed. You chose an outfit. Nothing special. At least that's what you thought. What you didn't know was that somewhere nearby, someone noticed. Someone who couldn't stop thinking about you. Someone who felt strangely connected to you before they even understood why. They noticed the color you chose. They noticed the way your clothes fit your personality. They noticed that you never dressed to impress anyone. You dressed to express yourself. And that tiny detail hit them harder than you could imagine. Because in a world where everyone seemed desperate to fit in, you seemed comfortable being yourself. At first, they told nobody. They kept their thoughts hidden. But every time they saw you again, they noticed something new. The way you combined simple things. The way you carried confidence without arrogance. The way your appearance told a story without speaking a single word. And slowly, a strange curiosity began growing inside them. Why couldn't they stop noticing you? Why couldn't they stop remembering the smallest details? Why did your presence stay in their mind long after you disappeared? Weeks passed. Then months. And one evening, while talking with a close friend, the secret finally slipped out. The friend asked a simple question. What is it about that person? The soulmate laughed nervously. They tried changing the subject. But the friend kept pushing. Finally they answered. And the room went silent. Because they didn't talk about your face. They didn't talk about your body. They didn't talk about your popularity. Instead, they said something unexpected. They said, "The way they dress tells me exactly who they are." Their friend looked confused. What does that even mean? The soulmate leaned back. Then revealed something that shocked everyone listening. They said, "Every outfit they wear looks like they're choosing honesty over attention." Nobody knew how to respond. Because it wasn't the kind of compliment people usually give. But they continued. They don't dress like someone trying to become somebody else. They dress like someone who already knows who they are. And suddenly everyone understood. This wasn't admiration. This was fascination. Real fascination. The kind that comes from seeing something rare. The kind that comes from noticing authenticity in a world full of performance. Yet that wasn't the shocking part. Not even close. The truly shocking moment happened later. Because one night, while looking through old photos, the soulmate noticed something unbelievable. Picture after picture. Month after month. Year after year. One pattern kept appearing. A pattern nobody else had noticed. Not even you. You always wore something that reflected your emotional state. Without realizing it. When you felt strong, your style changed. When you felt hopeful, your colors changed. When you felt heartbroken, your choices changed. It was like your soul was speaking through your appearance. And somehow, your soulmate could read it. The realization stunned them. Because it felt impossible. How could someone understand another person so deeply without a single conversation? How could they see emotions hidden beneath ordinary clothing? But the more they thought about it, the more convinced they became. And that's when they made a confession that nobody expected. They admitted that sometimes they could tell when you were having a bad day before you even spoke. Not because of your expression. Not because of your behavior. But because of the tiny changes in your style. The details nobody else noticed. The details only they seemed able to see. And that scared them. Because it felt deeper than attraction. Much deeper. It felt like recognition. Like two souls quietly recognizing each other from a distance. Meanwhile, you had absolutely no idea. You kept living your life. You kept choosing clothes without thinking twice. You kept moving through your days unaware that someone was decoding pieces of your heart hidden in plain sight. Then came the moment that changed everything. A gathering. A conversation. A chance encounter. The soulmate was finally asked a direct question. If you had to describe them in one sentence, what would you say? The room waited. People expected something romantic. Something dramatic. Something predictable. Instead, they answered with words that nobody forgot. They said, "They dress like someone who's been through storms and still believes in sunshine." Silence. Complete silence. Because everyone immediately felt the weight of those words. The soulmate wasn't talking about fashion anymore. They were talking about resilience. They were talking about character. They were talking about you. And when people later asked how they came up with that description, their answer was even more shocking. They said, because every time life knocked them down, they never stopped showing up as themselves. That answer spread. Friends talked about it. People remembered it. And eventually, the story reached you. At first you laughed. You thought it sounded ridiculous. How could somebody learn all that from the way you dressed? How could clothing reveal so much? But then something happened. You started looking back. You looked through old photos. Old memories. Old moments. And slowly, you realized they were right. The evidence was everywhere. The strongest version of yourself. The most broken version of yourself. The hopeful version. The scared version. The healing version. All of them had left clues. And somehow your soulmate had seen them. Seen you. The real you. Not the image. Not the mask. Not the performance. You. And that realization created a feeling you couldn't explain. Because everyone wants to be noticed. But very few people want to be truly seen. Being noticed is easy. Being seen is rare. And being understood without explanation is almost miraculous. Yet the biggest shock was still waiting. Months later, during a heartfelt conversation, your soulmate finally revealed the deepest secret of all. The secret they had hidden from everyone. The secret they never thought they would say aloud. They admitted that the first time they realized they were falling for you wasn't when you smiled. It wasn't when you spoke. It wasn't during some magical romantic moment. It happened because of an outfit. A completely ordinary outfit. One that you probably forgot existed. But they remembered it perfectly. Every detail. Every color. Every choice. Because that day they looked at you and thought something they couldn't explain. They thought, this person isn't pretending. And for some reason, that realization hit them harder than beauty ever could. Harder than attraction. Harder than anything superficial. Because authenticity is unforgettable. And genuine people leave marks on hearts without realizing it. That's why your soulmate kept noticing. That's why they kept remembering. That's why they couldn't forget. Not because of what you wore. But because of what it revealed. The strength. The kindness. The honesty. The resilience. The soul behind the style. And when they finally confessed everything, one final sentence left everyone speechless. They said, the clothes were never the reason I fell for them. They were just the reason I finally saw who they really were. And in that moment, everything made sense. Because the greatest love stories don't begin with perfection. They begin with recognition. One soul quietly noticing another. One heart seeing something beautiful beneath the surface. One person recognizing authenticity when everyone else is distracted by appearances. Maybe that's why this story feels so powerful. Because somewhere in the world right now, someone is noticing things about you that you don't even notice about yourself. Someone is paying attention to the details. Someone is remembering the little things. Someone is seeing pieces of your story hidden in plain sight. And perhaps the most shocking part isn't what your soulmate said. Perhaps the most shocking part is that every word they said was true. Because sometimes the smallest details reveal the biggest truths. And sometimes the person meant for you sees your soul long before they ever find the courage to tell you. And when they finally do, the truth has the power to change everything. The moment you heard those words, the clothes were never the reason I fell for them. They were just the reason I finally saw who they really were. Something inside you shifted. Not because it sounded romantic. Not because it sounded perfect. but because it sounded impossible. How could someone understand you that deeply? How could someone notice things that even you overlooked? For days, those questions stayed in your mind. You replayed every detail, every memory, every strange coincidence, every moment when you felt like someone was watching from a distance, not with judgment, but with curiosity. And then something happened that made the entire story even more unbelievable. One evening, your soulmate was having a conversation with someone they trusted. The discussion turned toward relationships, toward attraction, toward what makes someone unforgettable. People started listing the usual things: beauty, popularity, success, charm, confidence. But your soulmate sat quietly. They didn't say anything. Until someone finally asked them directly, "What made you fall so hard for that person?" The room waited. Everyone expected another emotional answer. Instead, they heard something that sent chills through the room. Your soulmate smiled softly and said, "Because they never knew anyone was watching." Confusion filled the room. "What does that mean?" Your soulmate continued. "It means every choice they made was real. They weren't dressing for attention. They weren't performing. They weren't trying to impress anyone. They were simply being themselves." The room became silent. Because suddenly everyone understood. Most people change when they think they're being observed. Most people become different when they think others are paying attention. But you stayed the same. And according to your soulmate, that revealed something powerful. It revealed integrity. The ability to remain yourself even when nobody is watching. That realization stayed with them for a very long time. Longer than they expected. In fact, it became an obsession. Not an unhealthy obsession. A curiosity. A mystery. Because every time they thought they had figured you out, you surprised them again. One day you looked strong. The next day you looked vulnerable. One day you looked fearless. The next day you looked thoughtful. It was as if your personality contained entire worlds hidden beneath the surface. And somehow, the clues always appeared in the smallest details. The details most people ignored. But then came the moment that truly changed everything. A moment your soulmate would never forget. It happened during a difficult season of your life. A season when almost nobody knew what you were carrying inside. You smiled. You kept going. You handled responsibilities. You appeared normal. But internally, you were fighting battles nobody could see. And somehow, your soulmate noticed. Not because you told them. Not because somebody warned them. But because something changed. Your style became quieter. Your colors became softer. Your choices became simpler. And while nobody else recognized the shift, your soulmate did. That was the day they realized something shocking. They realized they cared about your happiness more than their own. That realization terrified them. Because caring about someone is one thing. But reaching the point where their pain affects your heart, That's something entirely different. That's when love becomes real. That's when emotions stop being entertainment and start becoming responsibility. For the first time, they admitted the truth to themselves. They weren't simply interested in you. They weren't simply attracted to you. They loved you. And the realization hit like lightning. Because love wasn't supposed to happen this way. Love wasn't supposed to grow from tiny observations. Love wasn't supposed to develop through unnoticed moments. Yet somehow it did. And the deeper the feeling became, the harder it became to hide. Soon friends began noticing. Family began noticing. Even strangers started noticing. People could see something was different. Whenever your name appeared in conversation, your soulmate's entire energy changed. Whenever someone mentioned you, their eyes lit up. Whenever your picture appeared, they couldn't look away. Eventually someone confronted them. Why are you always thinking about this person? The answer came instantly. Without hesitation. Without preparation. Without fear. Because by then the truth was impossible to hide. They answered. Because every time I learn something about them, I respect them even more. Nobody expected that response. Respect. Not attraction. Not desire. Respect. And that single word explained everything. Because attraction can happen quickly. But respect is earned. Respect grows slowly. Respect comes from seeing someone's true character. And your soulmate believed your character was extraordinary. Yet the biggest surprise was still ahead. Months later, something happened that neither of you expected. An old photograph resurfaced. A photograph from years ago. A photograph almost forgotten. The image itself wasn't important. But what happened afterward was. Because when your soulmate saw it, they immediately remembered exactly where they had seen that outfit before. Not because the outfit was expensive. Not because it was fashionable. But because it represented a specific moment. A moment when you chose kindness over anger. A moment when you chose patience over frustration. A moment when you chose grace when most people would have chosen revenge. And suddenly they realized something incredible. Every meaningful memory they had of you carried the same pattern. The clothes changed. The years changed. The circumstances changed. But one thing never changed. Your heart. Your values. Your spirit. The person underneath remained the same. That realization became their favorite thing about you. Because consistency is rare. Many people change depending on who is watching. Many people change depending on what benefits them. But you remained you. And according to your soulmate, that was your most attractive quality. Not your appearance. Not your style. Not your image. Your authenticity. Your soul. The truth of who you were. And one night, unable to keep the secret any longer, they made a final confession. A confession nobody expected. They admitted that sometimes they intentionally remembered details about your outfits because they were afraid of forgetting moments connected to you. They remembered colors. They remembered patterns. They remembered tiny details. Not because the details mattered, but because you mattered. The details became anchors for memories. Memories they never wanted to lose. When people heard that confession, many became emotional. Because they realized something beautiful. Your soulmate wasn't remembering clothing. They were remembering feelings. Feelings connected to moments. Moments connected to you. And suddenly the entire mystery became clear. The reason they noticed your style wasn't fashion. The reason they remembered every detail wasn't appearance. The reason they couldn't stop thinking about you wasn't attraction. It was connection. A connection that grew quietly. Patiently. Unexpectedly. Until it became impossible to ignore. And then came the final revelation. The revelation your soulmate kept hidden longer than any other. The revelation that shocked everyone who heard it. One evening, they were asked a simple question. If you could describe them in one word, what would it be? People expected words like beautiful, amazing, special, perfect. Instead, your soulmate chose a word nobody saw coming. They said, home. The room fell silent. Because everyone understood the meaning immediately. Home isn't a place. Home is a feeling. A feeling of safety. A feeling of peace. A feeling that tells your heart it can finally rest. And according to your soulmate, that's what you became. Not because of what you wore. Not because of how you looked. But because of who you were. The way you carried yourself. The way you treated others. The way you remained genuine in a world full of masks. That was the real secret. The shocking truth hidden behind everything. Your soulmate noticed the way you dressed. But what they truly discovered was your soul. And once they saw it, they could never unsee it. Because some people attract attention. But very few people attract hearts. And according to your soulmate, you were one of those rare people. The kind who leave a permanent mark on someone's life without even trying. The kind who become unforgettable without realizing it. The kind who makes someone believe in destiny again. And perhaps that's why this story matters. Because somewhere, someone may already be noticing the little things about you. The things you consider ordinary. The things you barely think about. The things you assume nobody sees. Yet those tiny details may be telling a story. A story about your strength. Your resilience. Your kindness. Your heart. And one day, when the truth finally comes out, you may discover that somebody was seeing the real you all along. Not the version you showed the world. But the version hidden beneath everything else. The version worthy of being loved. The version worthy of being remembered. The version worthy of being chosen. And when that moment arrives, you may finally understand why your soulmate never stopped paying attention in the first place.